Hi, my name is Ivo Oskar, and I'm one of the founders of Rebalancing Earth. And I want you to become co-founders when we address global poverty and pollution in one go. We applied first principles thinking to these problems, found a fundamental systemic error as the common root cause, and drafted a solution. This solution cannot be implemented by nation states or other special interest groups. It's the people who have to deal with it, all people globally together. To make things simple, we just look at CO2 when we talk about pollution, as this highly correlates to all other forms of pollution. And as we can see in the graph, income correlates highly with pollution, in this case, CO2 emissions. The average person in the global top 10 income group has $75,000 for consumption. This consumption causes 23 tons of CO2. The bottom 50% have an income of $2,000 per year and cause pollution of less than a ton. The systemic error that causes the imbalance is that the income is kept private while pollution is shared. And the high-income people in the high-income areas can mitigate the impact, whereas the low-income people are the most vulnerable and have nothing to protect them from pollution effects like rising sea levels. To reduce the imbalance, we need to reduce pollution and poverty, and we can do this in one go. So, what do? The idea is to price tag pollution. We need to factor in pollution in all products and services. But this is not a really new idea. Actually, it's what most experts suggest. But CO2 trading and certificates at lobby-diluted prices don't do it. And there's another thing. We are used to pay retail prices, and when paying retail prices, we ignore that there are negative externalities like pollution, overfishing, nuclear waste. So we have been shopping all our lives at unjustified discounts. We need to factor that in, and we need to start with CO2. At this point, we fix the fundamental systemic error on the consumer side, when consumers compensate for their share of pollution, and for starters, we set compensation to $150 per ton. Why? Because the cost for carbon offset, like synthetic fuel or reforestation, and the CO2 capture is about $500 per ton, while CO2 taxes and certificates trading are around $50. These $50 obviously don't do the job, as we are nowhere near our goals. As a matter of fact, it's a huge gap. The green line shows where we would need to go to stay below 2%. The red line shows what the governments that have signed the Paris Accord are planning and budgeting for. And I can give you even a number on this gap. It's almost $6 trillion that governments globally spend to subsidize fossil fuels. Yes, you heard that right. They subsidize fossil fuels, not sustainable energy. This is why we need a people's movement and a significant price tag. $150 seems a good start. We will adjust this over time depending on the impact. Okay, how do we get the value to flow? This is where blockchain technology comes into play. To get the value flow of the compensation, we use NFTs. An NFT is a non-fungible token, a unique and non-interchangeable unit of data stored on a blockchain, which is a form of a digital ledger that provides public certification and authenticity and proof of ownership. We create compensation NFTs, a megaton of CO2 for $150 million. This is a simple, safe, and secure proof that somebody compensated for a certain amount of CO2 pollution. Now the global supply chain comes into play. Everybody in the supply chain is obliged to compensate by buying CO2 compensation certificates. Once he does this, his products and services get true price. He passes it on in the supply chain, and ultimately the consumer pays the true prices. In the future, organizations will have to report on their environmental impact according to the upcoming new IFRS standards, and compliance will not only be visible in the blockchain, but also in the balance sheet. The earlier in the supply chain the compensation is paid, the better. There are about 200 companies trading 80% of fossil fuels. If they compensate for pollution and factor it into their prices, all products building on them get true price. Now, let's take a look at the numbers. Using the NFTs, we create a value of about $5,310 billion, multiplying 35 gigatons of global CO2 emissions times $150 per ton. And where does the value go? The value goes to the people, and in equal parts. We will divide 5,310 billion by 7.4 billion people, and everybody gets compensated about $700 yearly. If it doesn't sound much to you, you're probably in the high income groups. For half of the global population, this means some funds to mitigate pollution effects. Extreme poverty would end and a new sense of global community would emerge. To distribute the compensation, we also use blockchain technology. We create a digital account for every human being, and the second somebody buys a compensation NFT, the value will automatically be distributed by smart contracts to these accounts. This way, we also enable kind of banking of the unbanked. Okay, now let's look at the impact. What can we achieve? The United Nations and the International Money Fund have done some calculations that focus on taxes. And based on their calculations, $100 per ton would be sufficient to keep the global warming below 2 degrees. Our calculation looks slightly different. So we agree that to do nothing is the worst case and would end up in a catastrophe. If we would compensate $50 or $100 per ton, we're afraid that the impact would not be sufficient because the high polluters are not so sensitive to these numbers. We think at least $150 per ton is necessary to see an impact on pollution. And our concept builds on yearly updates that adjusts the prices to the value that has the necessary impact. But we can be sure that the effect of global distribution of the value has an immediate impact on poverty, and extreme poverty is defined by $1.90 per day. With $700, we immediately wipe out extreme poverty. So the core idea of rebalancing Earth is to price tag pollution and mitigate poverty with the incoming value. So where is the initiative? We have completed bootstrap phase. We just entered the founders phase. And this is why I'm asking you to join in. To scale this, we need hundreds of people that globally drive the initiative. In the current phase, we need co-founders that join the upcoming founder DAO. Co-founders should bring some funding and be ready to take decisions going forward, as everybody in the DAO has equal rights. Our next milestone is to create a DAO for the UIO as the legal entity that will ultimately operate the program and implement the NFTs, wallets, and smart contracts. The other main task for the founders is to communicate with the various stakeholders. The founders build and moderate the communities that help the global scaling. The founders phase will hopefully take some months, the community phase 1 to 2 years. So we plan to be fully operational and go public sometimes in 2024. If this sounds crazy, according to reliable sources, it could be just right. But it's not crazy at all, because it's simple math. Big problems require big solutions, and now blockchain technologies enables humanity to work together for the first time. We have chartered the United Individuals organization that represents all people, like the UN represents all nations. We especially ask the crypto community to support us. Find all the sources we used in the description and do your own research to prove that we're on the right path. You also find links to our website and various social media channels. Okay, now it's up to you. Join as a founder or support in any other way. Help us to prove that the time for this idea has come, and together we will pull it off. Hope to see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.